Good afternoon. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to continue the studies of the international logistics. My name is Felipe. I'd like to invite you to subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like. Don't forget, support this channel with donations. Start the notifications and share this video with your friends. Follow me in Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you very much. Let's start. Be pleased to leave a commentary. Make your question. Now, if you're going to buy at internet, buy at the link below in the description, Amazon.com and Shopee. Thank you very much. The unions contend that the parent foreign corporations, not the Mexican maquiladora companies, hold the title to the materials that enter Mexico, as well as the finished merchandise that is exported from the country. Under the interpretation of the Mexican transportation law, the maquilas in Baja California Norte cannot use U.S. drivers for transportation services into Mexico. With regard to northbound movements, if the U.S. government were to reciprocate with the same restriction on Mexican drivers that Mexico has on U.S. drivers, then there would be no maquiladora transportation system. There are fewer restrictions placed on Mexican drivers into U.S. border communities. All four high Mexican trucking companies must have a certification or registration from the state commerce commissions to be allowed to enter U.S. border communities, commercial zones. To receive a certificate, a carrier must pay a one-time $200 fee to be certified. The motor carrier must declare that it is in compliance with existing requirements for minimum insurance and vehicle safety, and that it is current on its payment of U.S. road taxes. A minimum of day-trip insurance is required for all Mexican haulers who use U.S. roads and highways. Proof of insurance and documentation showing the date of expiration must be kept on board the truck. U.S. state and federal laws require Mexican truck drivers to purchase insurance policies from companies that are licensed to sell insurance in that particular state. The difficulty lies in finding an insurance company that's willing to write insurance for Mexican national truck drivers. The main problem associated with insuring Mexican drivers is that Mexico does not have a centralized system for tracking a driver's history. Some Mexican nationals are able to obtain a California driver's license and therefore can be insured. However, because their driving record in Mexico is unknown, they can only be insured at the expensive rate of assigned risk. Insurance companies also want to be compensated for their increased risk exposure associated with Mexican truckers' equipment. Tractors and trailers that originate in Mexico are believed to be less well maintained than their U.S. counterparts. The net result is a situation where Mexican drivers are required to have insurance that very few companies are willing to offer. Transportation equipment is still another issue to operate in California, along with Arizona and Texas. All Mexican motor carriers must meet the federal safety standards that were set in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. This set of standards states that Mexican equipment must comply with the same federal regulation as U.S. equipment in their entirety except for one. Mexican vehicles are not required to have front wheels brakes. If U.S. special officials were to strictly enforce these safety standards, then the perceived difference in maintenance between U.S. and Mexican equipment would disappear. United States trucking companies complain that U.S. authorities do not adequately enforce regulations on the Mexican drivers on the U.S. highways. The truckers claim that U.S. officials are lax during vehicle safety inspections. However, access or lack of access to Mexico highways appear to be the real motive behind these statements. The U.S. truckers seem to believe that if U.S. truckers are not allowed into Mexico, the Mexican truckers should not be permitted to bring their equipment to U.S. highways. The U.S. parent corporations of the maquilas do not make the same compliance as the trucking companies. The reason seems to be that if the maquilas are not permitted to use their own truckers and drivers, then they are willing to use the comparatively low-cost Mexican drivers instead of the U.S. drivers. Besides, the Mexican drivers offer the added advantage of being able to haul goods through the interior of Mexico when needed. In an effort to overcome some of the cross-border trucking problems, J.B. Hunt Transport Inc., a large U.S. motor carrier, very recently affiliated with a Mexican firm to form a subsidiary known as TMM Hunt de Mexico to handle trailers south of the border in Texas. Drivers who use U.S. roads are subject to the guidelines and restrictions of the Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1986. The act includes federal standards developed by the Department of Transportation for testing the fitness of all drivers. It also mandated that by April 1992, drivers who use U.S. roads also had to have a license issued by a state or by foreign jurisdiction that has regulations that at least are strange on the dots. Article 226 of the Motor Carrier Safety Act contains the regulations that limit Mexican national truck drivers to commercial zones established by the ICC. It can be an expensive mistake for Mexican truck drivers to leave the designated commercial zone. In August 1991, a Mexican-owned trucking firm was fined $7,500 for operating outside the geographical scope of the certificate issued by the Interstate Commerce Commissions. Documentation for goods crossing any border is always a problem that adds to costs and to delays. The Mexican Maquila Decree of 1989 defines some of the bureaucratic process